The first story is a story about a company that I founded back in 2003 called Protez Pharmaceuticals. And it was literally one of those deals on the back of a napkin with two co-founders, Klaus Esser and Luigi Zeri. And we had a hypothesis at the time that it was a time when big pharma was getting out of antibiotic research and development. And so we felt that there'd be a lot of stranded programs that have been put up on the shelf. So we embarked on that. We ended up raising a small amount of money through BTG locally. They put in about 900,000 just on, just based upon our reputations, et cetera. But then with that, we went out and bought another company out in Illinois. It was a small academic company out of the University of Illinois, Chicago. But they had a $2 million grant. And then we went from that to bringing in BioAdvance and bringing in Ben Franklin. And this is the conventional early stage route where you have grants normally, and then you've got some heavy angels, and then you've got the local community that come in, and you raise between $2, $3, $4 million to kind of get your venture off the ground. We had some internal programs we were looking at, but I think what we then is our hypothesis proved correct. We found a program over in Osaka, Japan, by Sumitomo Chemical, and we licensed it. It was a carbapenem antibiotic, and this was a connection that BTG had. So once we licensed the carbapenem, we had a preclinical asset, good data behind it, and traction into the clinic. And with that, I went out into the venture community, and the likes of Bay Cities Capital, Quaker BioVentures, Easton Capital, L Capital. These are East Coast venture capital companies. I raised, I think it was $18 million. We started at a $15 million round, but we raised 18 to progress the compound into first-in-man studies and ultimately proof of concept studies. So this is the normal track of antibiotic development, or of really any type of biopharmaceutical development in terms of preclinical, first-in-man, and you're talking about 20, 30, 40 million dollars is the normal price tag for that. But from an ownership standpoint, you can imagine with that amount of capital coming in, they take over a majority of the ownership of your company. And so what happens over time is management and founding members get diluted out, but normally employees and management hold on to about 15 to 20% of the company. And I was the CEO at the time, and I think at the time I may have had 4% of the company. And what happens at each round of capital, they give you more stock options to try to true up your ownership, but they really solve to let's say a 20%, 15 to 20% employee ownership type of venue. So to give you that backdrop, after we raised that 18 million, I think ultimately it probably rounded out to about 20 million. And we got it into first-in-man studies, and the drug worked good, et cetera. We actually ended up selling the company to Novartis at that stage. It was after positive first-in-man phase 1 study, so this is an early exit. But we ended up selling that company. We had 25 million invested, and we sold it for 400 million to Novartis. That had $100 million upfront payment, and then other milestones that would kick in, start a phase 3, et cetera. So that's the normal cycle of life, where at that point the investors, I think BioAdvance, the early investors got about a 5x return on their investment. The later investors got a 4x, management did well, et cetera. And the sad truth is the drug actually did fail in phase 3 development, which is sad for patients, because this is the time when MRSA was going strong, and now we have to deal with gram-negative antibiotic resistance. So both of the attributes of this drug would be efficacious against both those organisms. But that's the normal cycle of life, I'd say, with a small biotech. And now what we want to do is compare and contrast that against the JDP therapeutic story, which is a completely different journey. And hopefully we can then open it up for some discussion to kind of compare and contrast founding companies, getting them financed, and how you progress through the project and the financing along the way. So at this point, I'll kick it over to Jay, and she can tell you her journey.
Okay. Thank you, Chris. Okay, I'm going to take over, kind of give you this unique story of JDP that's very different from the typical model as Chris was describing. So I'm going to put a slide on, okay? So share screen. So this is just me and Chris. Chris just spoke. So then I'm the second person, I'm the founder. And okay, so this is really the second page I want to show. Myself, my background, I'm a scientist. I'm so different from Chris. Chris is dealing with the business, dealing with M&A and fundraising. I am a scientist. I have Ph.D. in pharmaceutics, and all I did before I started JDP, it was drug development, CMC, clinical trials, regulatory, patents, everything was science. So really very far from being an entrepreneur, being a founder of the company. So at that time, my previous employer, the company was acquired, and then I just thought, okay, that company was more about drug development. I was in charge of many steps of the drug development. I thought maybe I can do something similar. So then after the company was acquired, my previous employer was acquired, and then most of scientists were laid off, and I was one of them. And then I thought, okay, let me see if I can do something on my own. So that's why I started JDP Therapeutics, and I had so the difference you can see, this is the project roadmap, right? Before you start a company, you wanted to know, what do you want to develop? So before you starting a product, you really wanted to know those areas which I listed here: therapeutic areas and market need, IP, regulatory. So all these, this is the project roadmap. So so the difference really is I am the founder, I'm the scientist, which is the opposite from what Chris was saying. He's the business guy. He licensed a product and then hired a team of scientists to conduct R&D work. And for me, I'm the scientist. I do all my own drug development and IP work, meaning patents, and also basic drug development work. Everything's contracted outside to vendors, but I'm the one who actually designed the study protocol. All the details was done by me. And then I went out to look for business people to help me. That's how I met Chris at a conference. So here it is. This is the scientist founder team up with the business partner. That's this part. So if you have any questions, stop me at any time. So you can see the beginning is already different. The opposite, it's not just different, the opposite. Okay, so then I can continue on. So so then after I found Chris, then he basically taught me everything, all the things I did. He taught me very patiently. So here is the steps financing. As you know, being a scientist, I have never done financing. I didn't know how to raise money. So he just taught me step by step. But let me here kind of give you the example of the typical model is founders own money, friends and family, professional angel investors, and at this time you kind of connect with the state-run economic centers such as Ben Franklin, BioAdvance. So I wanted to go through the steps. So I did start the first step, which was the founders money, which is my own money, and I started to do some patent work. And then friends and family, I was very lucky. I was able to find some friends who were able to support me. The very first round of financing, it was we product yet at that time. I got $120,000 through just friends, basically church friends. So that's the amazing part of it. And then unfortunately, after that, I could never go any further, meaning I went to venture capitals to raise money, like follow the typical model here. The last step is venture capitals. After the first two steps, I just got stuck. So I went to Ben Franklin's and went to BioAdvance and also went to those professional angel investors like Robinhood and a bunch of them in the local area. I was turned down one by one. And total, I think, including the strategic companies, probably I reached out to 150 investors and companies. It's a huge number over the 10 years, not just at the beginning, over 10 years of time. I got stuck. And then I really didn't have a choice at that time. If I got stuck, I would still have to move on with the product, with the drug development activities. And luckily that I was able to do all these myself without really incur anything because it's just my time. So that's why JDP Therapeutics look at the side. We basically just had the first two founders' money and friends and family. We total had 7 rounds of financing, but basically we just went to the same friends and family, sometimes a few more, expand a few more. But the very last step was, since I got stuck in the US in this area, I even went to investors in Boston, in California. And it was just rejection one after another. So I had no choice. I have to go to China. So I was able to raise $3 million from a Chinese strategic company. It's a small CRO in Beijing. So that was really the key step that enabled me to finish the very last step, which is the phase 3 clinical trial. But because the way I was doing, the cost is a lot lower than a typical official, I would say, a typical standard pharmaceutical company, because I myself did all the design work, hire a CRO or a vendor just to do the actual lab work or the actual patient recruiting. So it's a lot inexpensive. But here, I just want to say, so JDP's financing was, at the end, was very simple. That wasn't my choice. It was just because I was rejected. And then I just kept going to the friends and family circle, and then went to the Chinese investor. Okay. So because of that, there's some kind of advantage, and I don't want to say advantage. Some then this result in the corporate structure different, right? So then look at the investment type. It's very complicated when you are with typical model. You have debt, you have common stocks, you have preferred stocks, series A, B, C, D, many layers. But because ours is just friends and family, it was very simple. It was just common stock for the first 6 rounds. They're all common stocks. And then we had the last one is a preferred A. That's the one from China. So the corporate structure and the investment structure was a lot easier.
So Jay, if I could interject something at this point.
Sure.
For a strategic investor in China was a CRO and a small pharmaceutical company, and what you basically did is trade away Chinese rights to the product as part of that investment. So that does represent an alternative financing pathway to small biopharma.
That's right. Yeah.
If you're willing to give up some geographies and you have an interest money that way.
Right. Yeah, correct. Thank you for adding that. So then go back to the typical model about the investment amount. It was average, I would say 30 million from the beginning to the end, after you get the drug approved. So we only spent 5 million. So you can see that the huge difference. Another I still have to say, I want to emphasize this. It wasn't my choice. It was just because I got rejected, I have to go just kind of find a different way to do the same type of work. So, okay, so then the founder's ownership, typically founder, the business founder who started the company owns 5 to 8%. I think in Chris's story earlier, the protest story, you said you were at 4%, right? So in this case, because we had very simple financing structure, we had, I still at the end of the company when the NDA was approved, when we were sold, I still own most of the company, okay? And then the investment return, 3 to 5 folds for typical model. I think in Chris's example, you said the first round of people whose return was 5 times, right? And the later ones probably even the return would be less. So for us, because we had no venture capital involvement, the investment return, especially for the first round of investors, it's unbelievable. I have to say unbelievable. I don't want to give you the number. It's just an unbelievable number. And then the stock price in each round, because of venture capitals, they're professional investors, the negotiation would be extremely difficult, right? So you end up having the stock price going up and down, and many often is down rounds. And this will really hurt the people who invested earlier. So in our case, because it's basically all angel investors, so I kept the price in a consistent up trend. So we didn't win 7 rounds of financing. We never had a down round. Everything was up. There was 1 round we priced a little higher, but during the negotiation with the Chinese investor, I realized that looks like the negotiation endpoint seems like at a certain value, which would be lower than the sixth round, the earlier round. We actually issued, the board agreed to issue a 1-to-1 warrants for that round, for the previous round. So this way cut their price in half. So we adjusted a little bit. So the final price for each round was up. So that's pretty rare for a typical model. So because it's a small company, we didn't have VC involved. Basically, all the board members, we are all investors. We take care of our investors. We just made some adjustment, just only once. That's one time that we adjusted, then led to the all up round for all the 10 years. Okay. So here is again same this because of the no VC involvement, and our team and a corporate structure is a lot simpler. Here a typical model with 30 million investment. You can imagine you will have the full CEO, whole team, CFO, CMO, everything, VP of regulatory, CMC, clinical, and many consultants. Meaning it's a whole company. For us, because we didn't have enough funds, and also myself is really a hands-on scientist, and all the drug development steps I did it before. That's the lucky part on me, is because I did it before. I interacted with FDA many times, and I had many patents granted in the past already. So that's the part we saved a tremendous amount of money, because I was the one that doing myself. So here, so we only had a few key consultants, very few. We had a good regulatory consultant. We only used her at the very end when we are filing NDA. Everything else I did on my own, and we had a few medical advisors. None of them were paid cash. They were all paid stock options. So that's why we were able to reduce the expense. So then, what did I do here? Office space, I worked from home. You could not believe it. I worked from home for 10 years. So in a way, I was above the time, right? Ahead of time, because I've been working from home for 10 years. So employee-wise, typical model, 7 to 10 full-time employees for this type of company. And for us, I always say we have 3 people. It's me, Chris, and Sharon, 3 people. But I was the only full-timer. Okay, in this case, I was the only full-time. Gwen knows that, right? Gwen, you know us. So
Yes.
yeah, salary is again, because we didn't raise enough money, so nobody took cash salary. Nobody got paid. No one got paid. It was all stock option. That's how I was able to maintain the majority ownership, and that's how the investors, their return was so high. Okay, and then one thing we did not save money is the lawyers. We use the top lawyers, just like the rest of the companies, the top lawyer in Philadelphia. Okay, only thing we did was we tried to use the lawyers only for key issues, something simple, you know, you Google it, you find it on the internet about the answers. The board structure is also very simple, just because we didn't have all those VC involvement. So it was 3 to 5 people who are myself and the angel investors, and Chris is on it. Chris is the chairman of the board. Okay, so next page. So then the exit, you know, everything in between is about drug development. I'm not going to get into the detail, but I wanted to talk to you about the business side, right? So now we finished phase 1, 2, and 3, right? So then typical model I wanted to talk to you here is the exit, engaging, here, the timing of exit. It's usually, like Chris was saying, his protest was sold after phase 1, right? After phase 1, they raised the money to complete that major milestone, then they sold it. So pretty quick, I would say, pretty efficient. And so for us, we actually we did all the clinical phases 1, 2, 3, and we filed NDA. We had a commercial manufacturing partner who are our contract manufacturing company. So for us, everything's done. We even had the trade name. The trade name for the drug, we even had that. We filed the NDA. At that time, we were sold, and the company, the buyer, because of the contract, the agreement with them, I can't really reveal who they are. But if you Google it on the internet, you will find out. I just cannot say it. Okay, so, but anyway, at the time that the NDA was filed and also accepted by the FDA. Not the approval, meaning the filing was accepted by the FDA. That's how the company, the buyer said, okay, now we are really going to pull the trigger to buy it. So we were bought very late, not like just achieve a milestone. We basically finished the drug. Then we were bought. So, so that's very different from a typical model. Typical model, you target the next milestone. For us, we finish the drug. Okay. So then the final product status here is because typical model, they're targeting the next milestone. You know, buyer buy you, and then they keep developing, try to reach another milestone, right? So for us, we don't have that step. Our drug is done. So our drug is actually after 6 months of exit, the product was approved. And now the product is on the market, saving lives. So, a typical model, as I specifically put it here, oftentimes studies fail and lead to shut down or merge companies. I think that's Chris's the example, the protest, right? They failed the phase 2. Then you never see the drug. That's it, that's the end of it. And for us, our drug is on the market right now. So this is a simple kind of overview of our experience. It's very different. And because it's very different and we got into difficulties with venture capitals, with the professional investors, because we are too thin. I remember one of the examples I had was, I was talking with several Chinese investors. One of them is actually a very large company called Fosun, huge company. They liked everything about us, but when they look at our spendings, They just thought we are not real because the spending was so small. So, they just couldn't pull the trigger. They said, you didn't spend anything. I told them, it's not how much you spend, it's how much you get. And it couldn't pass that. So end up we got investment, a small investment from a very small company in China, not that large Fosun Pharmaceuticals. That's a really big one. So anyway, this is kind of the overview. I'm not saying that I like my model. I'm just saying we were forced into that route, that path. But the end result is really, really good for everybody. It's a win-win-win for everyone. I would say that the buyer probably paid a little less than if it's a venture-backed company, right? Chris, would you say that? But for us, our return is humongous. It's unbelievable. And the best part is the drug is on the market, saving lives. It's very efficient, very quick. I would say quick, just because once it's sold, the drug is there. So
yeah, I think Jay, if I just make a comment,
sure.
In terms of the acquisition, a lot of times a buyer, especially you get into financing, they want to know how much money is invested in the company, and that helps them as one of their evaluation metrics.
Right. Chris, you're on and off. I don't know if this is just me. How about?
And that's true in an exit as well. They want to know how much money's been invested. Okay. Can everybody hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So so those metrics go into play. There's 4 or 5 different metrics you can use to value a company, but cash, especially early stages, cash in the company is one of the main things. And of course, since Jay spent so few dollars, it actually worked against the company. Right. In terms of the exit, though, we did set up a competitive process. So that kept the exit valuation more or less at market price, a fairly good deal, which is fine. But on the other hand, in terms of the investors in JDP, ended up getting a very healthy return on their investment. So I think it was a win-win transaction.
Hey, Chris and Jay, did you use a bank to help you with targeting companies, or did you guys do it yourself?
We actually interviewed a few banks, but ended up going with Aquilo out of South San Francisco, and John Dyer and that group I worked with in the past, and they're really good at the kind of the low to middle tier company level, and they did an excellent job.
Okay, thanks.
So Jay, anything to add to my description there?
No, I think you described very well. It's a win-win-win at the end. Even the very last round of investors, which are the Chinese, their return, they were there with us only for 2 years. Yeah, end of 2016, a little over 2 years. End of 2016, they invested. Then the company was sold early 2019. So it's like a little over 2 years. And even for the last round, they had 10 times return. So it's a win-win-win for everyone.
Yeah, I think, in terms of that, we brought in a Chinese investor, and even that was not without some aggravation or consternation, because they had promised a certain number to put into the company, and they got about halfway into it, and then they had trouble getting cash out of China. So yeah, I mean, they regret that, because if they would have put in their full investment, they would have made a lot more money. But since they didn't, what they started to do is kind of bootstrap their Chinese partners in the U.S. to try to make up some of that round. So even that wasn't smooth sailing there, and that's in the middle of starting up a phase 3 study to carry out to carry out that study on. Jay, you care to add more flavor to that?
Yeah, Chris, I hear you on and off. It's like I think I only
Okay.
a bit, yeah. But anyway,
Okay.
yeah, that's it is right, and even that that our contract with the Chinese was actually a lot bigger. The total investments is a lot bigger. Some issue of wiring the money over here, so we had to do it in a tranche, slow one a little at a time. So they only give us less than half of what the promise was. Yeah, it was like that. So, but we were able to finish the clinical trial.
Gee, I have a question for you.
Oh yeah, Sandra. Hey, how
are you?
Yeah.
Congratulations to you, Chris, and the rest of your company. Great. So,
Thank you.
what kept you going when you initially were getting all of the rejections that you received along the way from the potential investors, and how did you keep going through that?
Oh my God, this is I think, how should I say, at that time, I think two things kind of kept me going. Is initially I did receive some funding, very small amount of funding from a few friends. The first round was is from a few church friends. It was $120,000. I just could not let them down. I felt this is so like worry and uncomfortness. I was thinking if I'm going to quit. So the second thing is I think that's the most important thing is about the drug itself. Chris, we can talk about what the drug is, right? We don't have to say the name.
Absolutely. No, I think talk about the indications and the significance of this.
Yeah. Okay, so let me tell you about the drug. Why I have just no doubt the drug will do well. The drug will be so big, and because it fills a huge unmet need. I'll give you example. Not example. That's the antihistamines, right? We have Zyrtec on the market. We have Allegra. We have all these drugs on the market. They're all tablets. They're all for the chronic conditions, meaning you have the allergies. You take the drug every single day, for like 3 months, something like that. But you also know there is something called acute allergic reactions that you go to the emergency room to treat. And then there is only one drug. In the last 65 years, there's only one drug. That's the Benadryl. You heard of Benadryl, right? Benadryl is a tablet we take, but there's also a Benadryl IV version. So our drug is Zyrtec IV. So meaning that you have all these tablets on the market for 20, 30 years, but none of them is in IV, in the emergency room used for acute patients. So that's how we developed this product, and the need is just, I think it's a no-brainer. It's very simple to understand. In acute patients needs IV tablets too slow, and your only drug is the old, very, very old diphenhydramine, has all those side effects. So our drug will be Zyrtec IV. That's a newer antihistamine. You have all this, the same indication, same strength, efficacy, but without any of the side effects. So it's a very simple thing to understand, and it's like a no-brainer. So this really kept me going. I know this drug is going to do well. I do whatever I do, I'm going to get this drug through. And then we went to the FDA to have a meeting with them, told them the concept. Immediately from the FDA's eyes, it feel like, wow, yeah, we need that. Why nobody did an IV? It's like this positiveness, the support from the FDA was very strong, which is rare for a product. Usually when you go tell an investor, they say, hey, what did the FDA say? I said, the FDA loves the product. You can see those letters we got from them. So that's kind of just kept me going. I feel like, something is so good and nobody's doing it. I need to continue.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, thank you. So those are very good questions. And at the beginning, Sandra is here. I wanted to mention is we didn't have money. We have to write some what's that? Was that the grant we applied for from the government?
It was, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So,
Yeah, Sandra wrote the grant for me. So thank you. That was a good job. That was our first big money we got.
long time ago. Yes.
Long time ago, 10 years ago. Yeah, 10 years ago. So,
This is
so we received, I think it was 250, about 250K grant. That was a lifesaver at that time.
Good.
Yeah. So thank you for that. I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad to have played a very small role. So that's wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah. So any other questions?
I have a question.
So maybe just add, go ahead, Jen.
I was just going to say, it sounds like your process was so different than the traditional process. And like you said, it was not by choice. But what are the things that you would either you've learned from the process or that you would be able to pass on to other companies having done it this way?
Chris, you want to answer that?
Sure. Well, I think, in hindsight, and Jay and I talked about this through the journey, it did take its toll on Jay. She spent long days, well into the night, day after day, week after week, month after month. And so I think I wouldn't recommend to a new entrepreneur to take a project, put it almost solely on their own shoulders and spend 10 years trying to. Personally, this is me talking. It's just too high. And there's oftentimes we talked about, Jay, we need this off your shoulders, et cetera. And we knew she didn't have the capital to do it, but that was the reality of the situation. But, it speaks to her persistence. She was doggedly persistent. She's obviously a very talented scientist, a very talented drug developer. That she could take on these multifaceted areas, put them on her own shoulders and knock them out and do it. So, I think of people who go and work in various areas and they accumulate all this experience. And this is a classic case where Jay, in his cumulative experience, and saw it through. There's not, in my opinion, there's not a lot of individuals that really can do what she did. But that doesn't mean it can't be done. It just requires teamwork. It bring on team members so you can offload some of the sheer amount of work onto a broader team. And I look at JDP. JDP was basically a project. It wasn't run like a company. This was run as a project, very streamlined, very focused project, and Jay did an excellent job at that. So, in terms of scope, this. And not a lot of these biopharma companies, when you cut right down to it, they have a program. And in a lot of cases, it's a project. And so many of them do overstructure, frankly, for the scope of work that they've got going. They can, frankly, in a sense, use outside consultants, outside expertise, and really just have a exterior. And I think that's basically what Jay, is that a good description, Jay?
Yeah,
I don't know if she can hear me.
Yeah, that's right.
My choppy.
Yeah, it took a lot of toll on me. There's no doubt about it. I probably, yeah, as you said, I don't recommend other people to do that. It's just too much, all the responsibilities is on one person's shoulder. That's just too much. But on the other side, I still think it made this whole thing very efficient. Otherwise, you think about it, any decision I make, I have to get board approval. The board is 7 people. So it's a very complicated process, right? In this case, it's basically I'm making a decision, then I talk with the board. Are you guys okay with it? Usually people say, okay, all right, if you think it's good, it's good. It's very quick. So pros and cons, and you're right, it's a project. At the end, if the project becomes a product, that's what the buyer is looking for. They're looking for the product. Once they buy the product, lay everybody off anyway. So that's happened to my previous employer. We got that coaching product approved, sold on the market, and then they bought us. That's a Philadelphia company. It's a medium size, about 500 people company. They bought us. They basically laid all the scientists off. They kept the marketing people. And they even sold the facility. The reason for the 500 people in that my old employer, it was the manufacturing facility. It has its own manufacturing facility. So Takeda was the one who bought it. Takeda bought it and then sold the manufacturing facility to somebody else. Then they just contracted the manufacture of that coaching product to the CRO. Now the CRO is basically their own company years ago, right? And then laid off all the scientists. They want the product. That's it. So it's a project. But it's a project within a very, very thin layer company. So it's better to have some cushion to make it more robust. We were a little vulnerable, right, at that time. If something goes wrong, everything goes wrong. So it's vulnerable. I have to say that. So a typical model is probably a little complicated. My JDP's model may be a little too thin. Maybe something in the middle, I would say, right?
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases you can run these programs with 6 to 8 people and then outsource much of the work. So you don't, these things can be run very lean.
Right.
and very efficiently. It's just you have to really be mindful and know some really good external CROs, either contract research organizations, vendors that do really good work that you can contract the bulk. We're in preclinical, and we have on that one we have 4 employees. So and we got plenty at that point. Most of the work's done externally, and they direct the work and negotiate the contracts and pretty much make sure that the external work is done in a quality way.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So any other questions? Jay's still here. She's still standing.
Yeah, right.
She's I'm happy to report she's a very wealthy woman. So she did get paid for the fruits of her labor, which is always nice to see.
Right,
right. A lot of times these things blow up and you have really nothing to show for it. So, this program, albeit I thought it was high probability and all the boxes were checked on it. So it was a solid program. Some of these programs go south on you and literally they'll fail in phase 3, et cetera. And, you have very little to show for a lot of work. So we're very happy and thankful that this cetirizine IV really performed well and will be a great drug for acute urticaria. And it's a high prevalence of that in hospitals and clinics. So we have high hopes that the drug will do very well and help a lot of people.
Great. So do you think you'll do this again? Are there plans for something coming up? Or are you taking a break?
That question, I think Chris and I talked several times, right? I think I don't rule out the possibility to another company again. And now the good part is we have a great team, and Chris and I, we have another person, marketing person. It was worked like a charm. We didn't know each other before. I met Chris at a conference, and I met Sharon from, I don't even remember where, just somehow randomly we met. And it's a great team, right? Chris, do you think so? Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I think
Yeah.
we have complementary skills, and
Right.
And we're not, we're not afraid to really get out our thoughts on the table. It's out of mutual respect.
Yeah. Right. So I don't rule out the possibility. And right now, this is the second year after the company sold. Just happened to be this pandemic. And so right now I'm basically not doing much, and look at the stock market, like that, not doing much. And so, but it's possible. Let's see what happens after the election, after the pandemic. We may be, right, Chris?
So I did say to Jay, I'm not going to let her do another JDP Therapeutics. He's not going to spend another 10 years in a cave
right,
developing a drug, because life is short, right? So we'll do this one differently. We will resource it more fully up front. We'll bring in a little extra capability to take the pressure off of Jay's shoulders, so she doesn't have to live with every aspect of it. Although I think you all gather she's a hands-on work out of her hands to kind of get her to be able to live other parts of life.
Right. So it's the key with this, I think you have to know the drug development many steps, right? I think the step that usually a scientist doesn't have that experience is the patent. I happen to work, my previous employer was actually a generic drug company. So I had a lot of experience dealing with the patents. That was a very lucky part. It's very rare for scientists. So I had a 10 years experience at my previous employer, URL Pharma. It was acquired. So at that company, working mainly between these three areas, patents, FDA, and clinical. So those are the very key, most important things for a company like this. Usually they are the most expensive pieces when you go out to find consultants. Fortunately, I did this before for several other drugs, which all got FDA approval in that three areas. So in a way, I guess I was meant to have my own company, right? I got all these things in my hand, and then I know what to do with those the most important parts and most expensive pieces.
Yeah, well, she's proven herself. She's very good at what she does, and it's really nice to see the level of success that she's accomplished here. And the patients are going to be the beneficiaries of 10 years of Jay's work.
Right. Yeah, the patients. Yeah, the medical field. Yeah, the FDA is very happy with this drug. They just can't wait for the drug to be approved. They were pushing me, say, hurry up, when are you going to start your trial? They were pushing me. So it was a good feeling.
Okay. Any closing questions before we close this session?
Thank you. Congrats.
Well, we appreciate everybody turning out today to hear the story, and who knows, there may be future stories here.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful evening.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.